Welcome to the Heartwork podcast, where we delve into stories, struggles, and triumphs of entrepreneurship, leadership, and personal growth. I'm Dr. Sarah.
And I'm Dr. Marisa. We're here to guide practitioners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and those just navigating the complexities of life on a journey of discovery that explores the dance between passion and strategy, heart and hustle.
With candid conversations, insightful interviews, and plenty of laughs, get ready to uncover how leading with heart can transform your business and life. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Heartwork podcast. We are so excited. I have my good friend and colleague, Meagan McArthur, on the call today. So we are so excited to have you. The fun little behind the scenes of this. Meagan actually came to us into Freedom Chiropractic as an associate chiropractor. So I hired her, what's it been now? Almost 3 years now?
Almost 3 years, yeah.
Crazy. So it's been 3 years, and in that journey, her and her husband were planning on moving back, and her husband got an amazing offer to continue to stay in Austin, Texas. And so sadly, and with so much bittersweetness to us, we allowed her and graciously sent her on her way back to Texas. But one of the things that I then really tried to wrangle in was keeping her within our social media and within our team. And so we actually wrangled her to do all of our social media. If you follow her at all, she is Wealth with Meg online, and she has built a following when it comes to financial education and other social media networks within the chiropractic and the practitioner world. And so we're really going to dive into some finances today, really going to dive into kind of also what happens when you go from an identity of doing higher level education, getting a doctorate, really like having to say, man, I may not be practicing anymore, but I'm going to be in the network still with these chiropractors or with these other health practitioners as well. So what lights you up the most? Because I know a little bit of your story when it comes to financial education and that type of stuff. And then also what took you into social media. What lights you up the most when it comes to those two vastly different areas of entrepreneurship?
I know that is something that I'll never forget. When I was interviewing with you, actually, Dr. Sarah, I loved so many different things, and you commented on that, and you're like, you really do love all these different things. And I was like, I know, I have a hard time pinning it down. But I think that health and wealth both kind of go hand in hand, because money and finances causes so much stress for people, which ultimately will impact their health. So it wasn't until I was in chiropractic school that I kind of got into the financial education part of things. Just did that on the side, obviously pursued getting my doctorate, went to work for you. And then as I was continuing to share all this financial education online, I clearly was keeping up with social media and trends with that. So it kind of organically just led me to doing Freedom Social as a doctor. So when we moved to Austin, I was like, hey, Dr. Sarah, can I stay on doing your social media, please? And it is two vastly different topics, but I do kind of bring them together, which is why wealth is spelled the way it is in my username, WHEALTH, because they're both so interconnected. But yeah.
It's so wild. I do remember. So Marisa and everybody listening. So when we interviewed her, her resume had all these beautiful, all the things, right? You had definitely dove into so many things as a student. And it was a really cool thing to be able to see you love a lot of things, but it's really now neat to be able to see how you've narrowed in and really niched into something that your heart beats for, versus it just be all this, I got to do all these other aspects of life to be successful, right? And to really educate people when it comes to financial wealth and health, along with really helping curate brands online as well. So can you talk to us a little bit? Because I know that you went through this, and I know that this is relatable to a lot of other practitioners. For a lot of times when you go through so much schooling and you get a doctorate, all those type of stuff, it's really easy to identify with that is all that you are. And that's something that it's all you can do. So what was it like for you to transition from obviously being the doctor, having your hands on people, seeing health changes that way, to continuing to really bring forward just a completely different path for your just business and your entrepreneurial journey. And then what happened in your heart as you had to navigate that?
It was an interesting journey for sure. Definitely a lot. Well, first I recognized that My professional growth didn't have to be me abandoning my clinical identity because you're right. Like I put so much time, so much effort into getting my doctorate. It was a very exciting thing I was doing. I was very proud of it. Now, I would be lying if I didn't say I had doubts or those negative voices in my head were like really, really loud the first couple months when we had moved to Austin because I left a stable associate position. I loved the team, I loved the work, but realizing that it was not abandoning my clinical identity, but like expanding it. So that's something that sets me apart now is I can take my clinical background and it's like this unique advantage. I was leveraging those skills just in a different way. And it's honestly helped me strategically like stand out compared to other practitioners in this space because I have the background and the knowledge and education that I do, which has been super cool to watch because as I've kind of like switched from this like abandoning my clinical identity, like a lot of people would be like, are you ever going to practice again? Like, how do you feel about never adjusting again? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I don't know that I would never do it. Like, if the right opportunity comes, I'd love to get back to it. But at the same time, like switching from that negative kind of outlook into like an expansion outlook was huge. And it's really helped me. And I don't have the doubts or the negative voices. And I mean, I do still sometimes, but the voices are not loud and they are more encouraging and confident than they are like questioning.
I love that. Can you like
Yeah.
expand on really what were some of those like key mindset, heart set shifts that you really found were the most like profound and really spoke the most to you as you were going through that, kind of journey of those initial couple of months and then coming through it and recognizing that you can expand through this?
Yeah, I mean, it was a guessing game at first. To be honest, like I was, Dr. Sarah, not very in tune with like all these mindsets and stuff like that. But to change that outlook also came with like, okay, kind of like how is my worth identified too with being in clinical practice and with money and stuff. So I'd say the hardest thing was trying to navigate how I'm going to like advertise myself or like market myself as this chiropractor who's left practice but still wants to be involved just in a different realm. So I would say the key mindset shifts were kind of identifying like those negative loud voices being like, you should be in practice, you're a chiropractor, you went through all this education, like you're giving it up, to being like, okay, wait, no, I'm actually leveraging these skills to combine two passions that I really love, which is chiropractic and online marketing. And that's kind of how I found myself where I am today.
It's amazing. What do you feel like, especially as you've educated, and I see this a lot, and like Maurice, you and I have talked about this just on like the financial aspect of like things when you talk about money and you talk about like anything when it comes to abundance or just building a financial wealth portfolio and stuff like that, along with having an incredible load of debt. Like when it comes to coming out of chiropractic school, if you are a chiropractor listening to the show, or if you are in any world of coming out of a higher level aspect of schooling, you're gonna typically have debt. Maybe you're the lucky ones where you don't. So what do you typically see as some of the biggest struggles, especially when you're educating about financial things with your clients that people really run up against within their own financial mindset?
Something that I've seen a lot of specifically chiropractors or healthcare practitioners run into is like you said, they come out of school with so much debt. It can be so overwhelming and like suffocating, all consuming, but they're putting their identity in that instead of focusing instead on like the abundance of it. There are literally limitless ways that you can make money, increase your income, leverage those skills kind of like I did. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to like hustle like that or take on a side hustle, but if they're going out into like their first associate position, I have found through like conversations that I do as like me, I advocate more for the associate in chiropractors than I do necessarily for like the business owner. But like Dr. Sarah, something you do, you take care of your associates so, so well. And unfortunately, that's not the norm in chiropractic. But as the associate, like looking for those benefits that you can get at your job and that you deserve. Like if you go and work in a corporate job, you're also going to get a 401k. You're going to have these things that you can start building your personal wealth with the money you're making because a lot of people will have the debt. they'll have like no idea how to start like managing their money once they make it because they've been in school for so long that, you know, they've had money, but they haven't had like an actual salary for years at a time. And that's the thing that I think people struggle with the most is once they start making money, what the heck to then do with that money.
How to be an actual steward of it versus just a spender. Because truly, like, I mean, I remember being in school and you were just waiting, you were counting down the days when that disbursement comes out, if you were able to qualify for loans. And then if you needed more like Grad Plus and et cetera, et cetera. And it almost, you do live in this bubble where I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you're not the actual maker of the money, it doesn't like energetically, it doesn't hold the same value to you as if you went out and hard earned it, even though it's tied to your name, it's tied to your social security, and you are the one that's ultimately going to be responsible for it at the end of your schooling. It doesn't quite still feel real because your job right now is being a student. Your job right now is learning your skill or learning your task. And so it's not like you're physically going out there and having to put in specific hours to earn something back. And when we're in school, you know, they do some classes of like, or just maybe a couple touch points with the business center of like, make sure that you understand that putting your $6 coffee on a credit card over a long period of time not only adds up to $6 times 30 days per month, but then if you're going to pay it on interest at 6% return, your $6 coffee each day actually costs you about 10,
Right.
you know, with compounded over time.
Right. And when you're given your loan disbursement, it's like monopoly money because you don't have to
Yeah.
pay it back immediately, especially for my class. We were during COVID, so they had paused interest on student
Oh,
loans.
sure. Yeah.
A
Right.
lot of people didn't even realize that this entire time we're in school, they actually should have had interest being on their, like accruing on their debt. Um, and I mean, shoot, I think one of my loans is still has no interest because they're still like navigating all the things in the Supreme Court, which is just so crazy. And we're very, you know, lucky for that timing because we've saved a lot of money on interest. But you're absolutely right. The energetic exchange between getting a loan versus getting like a paycheck is completely different. And if you don't want to work forever, you have to learn how to get that money to work harder for you. Even if you retire at 65, like if you don't save or invest anything, you're going to have to keep working to get that money coming in.
Absolutely.
So for those people that are kind of curious about like, man, maybe I haven't done anything yet. I'm a student, or I can be starting to think about some practical things that they can start to implement. And you've been in practice for a long time and maybe you haven't sought some of these other things out, or you're trying to pay off debt. Are there some things and some practical things that you would recommend for people to implement in those various stages of life and practice?
For sure. So again, if your employer offers a 401k, definitely enroll in that. That is automatically taken from your paycheck, so you won't even see the money hit your bank account. So it's like you don't even have that money to spend. Plus, if they offer a match, that's amazing because that's free money for you essentially as the associate. But I would say the number one thing, no matter what, is track your expenses. You have to know where your money's going in order to manage it. So there was a quote, and the guy is Rob Dyrdek, who is from like Ridiculousness on MTV from like way back in the day. But I heard him on a podcast and it just like, it was the biggest aha moment. This man made millions of dollars, but he spent millions of dollars. And so he netted zero or close to zero. He was like, I started over. I made millions, I spent millions, and I essentially started over once I like came to this realization of like, oh, I need to know where my money's going because I've just spent it all. And I mean, you see it with athletes all the time, like professional athletes, and it's so crazy. So track your spending would be the number one thing I would suggest. It's gonna suck potentially at first. It's gonna be very daunting, but just knowing where your money is going and then kind of like reflect on that. Be like, okay, does this align with what I want to spend my money on? My husband and I are we're very in tune with like our spending values is what we call them. We don't love to spend on like new clothes, trendy things that like come and go, but we do love to go eat out. So our eating out expense is much higher than some people would expect or, you know, think was reasonable for them. But that's something like we love doing. We love socializing with our friends. We love going out. Now we try to manage that, but being able to know where our money's going and then reflect on that it's a game changer. So that's like the number one. But if you want me to keep going, I have a lot more.
Well, I love that you and your husband like are talking about that and making that a connection point for you two, because a lot of people have money issues but aren't open about them, or they haven't really gone through the journey of reflecting themselves to recognize that they do potentially have a money issue, and that kind of hidden aspect and not being honest about it, whether it's wrapped up in shame or whether it's just like, no, this is mine. Like I have it. I do what I want with it. Again, can lead to concerns on the line where maybe you do have a bigger goal and it's like, wow, I actually could have spent that time potentially evaluating those decisions or making healthier money choices by just taking a moment to pause, reflect, and actually calculate and see what the impact of that is. And then doing that with the accountability of another person might seem scary, but if you're in that partnership, how valuable is that?
So valuable. And now it's not going to be easy or perfect at the beginning. You have to it's vulnerable. Like you have to be like, okay, I have X amount of debt, or I like spending on X, Y, and Z. And if it doesn't align, then you just have to have those conversations to figure out, okay, where is a good happy medium? But we do it like we track our spending weekly. We used to use an app, and I do still love the app. It's Copilot. But I needed a more like muscle memory approach. Like I was like, okay, I'll spend $50, $100, but then I wasn't like looking at it and being like, yikes, like I actually don't want to be spending $100 on my nails every month. I would rather reallocate that money. So doing it weekly and then reviewing it together weekly has been so, so good for us, because I have a budget template. And so I'm like typing it out each transaction, which to some may sound tedious, but it's that muscle memory and being like, okay, I've spent $50 on this already this week. Like I'll think next time I'm about to spend something, do I need this? Does that align? Like I just have those thoughts real quick. Like you said, take the pause, reflect. But yeah, it's been really crazy. It's helped us pay off a lot of debt and also save and invest a lot of money that we never thought we would be able to.
That's cool. I loved how you talked about it, how you're spending values versus just like spending budget or spending limits or whatever it is. Like you put out a place to where you have a value towards a specific dollar amount toward the things that you really love and that you want to spend money on. And I think that's really just a beautiful thing to be able to also talk to people. Some people may really like the extravagant clothes or they want the big travel experiences, but then you can quote unquote budget differently to be able to really make that money move for you at the same time.
Right. Personal finance is so personal, and that's the beauty of it. Like you can do what you want with your money. And also like a budget has such a negative connotation. It's supposed to be like restrictive, limited, and the way that we've kind of switched our mindset about it is it's our spending plan. We are planning these expenses based on what we want to spend on. And just having that little mindset switch has been, again, it's been so amazing to switch to the positive instead of this like restrictive budget. Oh God, we have to pull up our budget. Our heart rates are increasing. Oh no, we're like excited to like look through it, be like, okay, did we hit this, hit that? Yeah. So it's like those little changes can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's the mindset shift of like, I get to spend this much on food or this much on going out or this much on the high-end things I love, compared to like, oh, I only have $100 to spend in this category, right? It's a totally different negative connotation versus like, how can I get curious? How can I get creative with what we're going to do with our money this month?
One of our mentors has said like, date your money and like be playful with it. And I love that when it comes to just mindset, because it's a very different, again, connotation, mindset, behavior around it comparable to, again, I only have this or I only can do this. It's a very lack mindset comparable to what the potential that can come from it, which is
right.
It's really cool. So you talked a little bit, or I just know this. So I don't recommend this for everybody because it's not always just going to be their season, but I know that you've also taken on multiple different things. Like you're actually a professor at the same time. And so like you have created strategy to also be able to make money and to be able to be really a steward of all of those strategies. So will you, like, again, this may not be for everybody because you may be doing already your full-time job. You may be a full-time parent. You may not have the capacity to be able to be a professor and work and do all these other things too. However, if you're looking for side things to be able to make some extra money or to be a steward over that, what are some things that you found or that you've coached some of your people into thinking outside the box in?
Yeah, so I know sometimes I'm like, when I tell people all of my streams of income, they look at me like I have six heads, but I'm like, it's all fundamentally the same thing. It's teaching. I am teaching as a professor that's an adjunct professor. I'm not a full-time professor. I am teaching about financial education. I am teaching about chiropractic through social media management. And all of those skills are so transferable that it's at the end of the day, like I love teaching. As a kid, I always wanted to be a teacher. I was a swim coach. I did swim lessons. So again, I'm just teaching kids about swimming and that I had my own swim lesson business, which at the time I was like, just doing it myself. So I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. But I looked back and I was like, wow, I was actually an entrepreneur at 15 years old. Like I was outreaching to people. I was keeping track of all the monies made. I was like following up, making my own schedule. And of course, you're 15 years old, so you don't really think you're running a business. But looking back, I was like, look at me. But it's all come down to like the basic fundamental of teaching. And so if you find something that you're passionate about, if it's copy or if it's writing, you can do copywriting, you can do SEO optimization. There's so many different things. You could start a blog, like find the basic skill that you love to do and then go and like explore different avenues for you to capitalize on it.
I mean, I think that's kind of also where Marisa and I came to, even just with this podcast. It's like we were talking on Marco Polo since 2020, almost every day. Literally, literally. Like, all right, well, and more so, it's just been something that's like we love to do. So it's like where this has come from. It's led from a place that we really enjoy connection. It's like we really enjoy the place of connecting with people like yourself and connecting with our own hearts and with each other. And so what a beautiful opportunity to be able to, again, fine tune that to where it's coming to you can at least understand, like, I am excited about this and I'm going to be able to see if there's other avenues to be able to monetize or to be able to cultivate and expand something else. Which is
right. And you connect all day long in your practice with people about their health. So like connection is something that you can capitalize on and expand so easily because you're leveraging that skill.
Right. And if you're not passionate about it, or if you're not enjoying what you're doing, how quickly that leads to burnout with multiple things that are pulling your brain space in different directions. Even this whole conversation about passive income versus active income. I'm curious your thoughts because a lot of people are like hitting this like almost buzzword, like passive income,
Yes.
passive income. I want passive income. And they don't realize passive income isn't actually really passive unless you're completely wiping your hands of something, right? A lot of times people will look at real estate or Airbnb as some kind of passive income, but on recognizing that you're either going to pay for someone else to manage it for you so that you can sit back, or there will be some level of weekly or monthly amount of work and intention that you have to put behind it.
Right. I don't like the word passive income. I think it is such a I think people hear it and they like get so captivated and they're like, oh, I gotta do the next thing to make passive income. And it's such a roller coaster, because it's not passive. Like you said, you're either doing it on a weekly or monthly basis, putting some time into it, or you're paying somebody to do it. And that is going to eat into your profit. Instead of passive income, I try and focus on finding your passionate income. Somebody else had said this a long time ago, and it stuck with me. And I was like, wow, that's what you should find. Not your passive income stream, but passionate income streams. Because again, like you said, it won't burn you out as quickly. You have to love what you're doing. And now it's work at the end of the day. So you're not going to love every aspect of work, but you'll have so much love for the big object that you'll do the admin stuff that you don't love. But yeah, passive income, I think, is a buzzword that is overused and it gets people sucked in, and then they don't ever see the profits that they expect to. So I have a budget template that I have sold on just my social media. And it was a budget template I created for my husband and I to track our expenses. And I shared it in a video and somebody was like, oh, can I have that? And I was like, oh, I wasn't actually planning on sharing this, but let me change some formulas to make it a little fancier. And yeah, sure. But again, like every week I'm sharing a what we spent this week video to promote that budget template. So yes, I'll get an email at 7 p.m. saying someone has purchased it, and that could be passive, but it's also not the 2 hours that I took to film and edit the video. Like that's where I just don't think passive income is truly, truly passive.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's switch a little bit. We're going to just or merge it to some of the stuff with some of your social media aspects. I know there's also a lot of people on here that see build brands and want to put themselves out there and are really trying to build something to be able to help create impact and create monetization at the same time, right? And so what's something that you've seen that has been a benefit to you just in your world of social media marketing? What are people looking for? And also what are roadblocks that potentially can like keep people from showing up authentically online?
I would say that the thought of other people like watching you is a big thing that stops people from showing up online. And it's so just disheartening because you just gotta get like you'll be cringe. Who cares? Like everyone starts from the ground up. If you're a chiropractor, that first adjustment you give to a patient in practice is not going to be the same as you do 3 years down the road. It's the same thing with social media. Gosh, the amount of people who like growing up would just like they wouldn't make fun of me in like a negative way, but they would like make a joke about it. And I was like, yeah, just wait. Like you'll see, it'll be fine. And now like they're coming to me being like, wait, can I actually have that budget template? And I was like, yeah, it's just you just got to get past the cringe. You just got to put yourself out there. And I know it sounds so cliche, but like be yourself because everyone is out there doing like the same thing, which is fine. Like if you want to do a get ready with me, that's great, but maybe like add your own spin to it. So something that I'm going to start doing because I was doing like day in my life videos and I was like, wait, but how can I relate this more to money? So I'm going to like start sharing 5 money rules for millennials or something like that as I'm like going throughout my day. Also capitalize on people being nosy. That's what I did. People love to be nosy. I am nosy. If someone's going to like share how much they're spending, then I'm going to watch the video. And so I started sharing like how much we spend and how much we make, well, how much I make. My husband did not sign up for that, but I've had so many people reach out. And Austin is a definitely higher cost living area. And so people be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing like how much you spend. Like I feel a lot better. We've been tracking our spending. And I'm like, holy moly, how do we spend so much? And I was like, as long as you're still like figuring out what you value, what your goals are, and able to hit that, then that's all you can do. Like spend your money freely. It always comes. Like there is an energetic exchange behind money, and it is so wild. Like if we pay $500 for, an unexpected expense, somehow $500 just finds its way back to us. Like it's just a constant energy flow, and it just makes you sleep a lot better at night knowing that.
Well, having the faith and the confidence in that, right? Because some people do not understand that energetic exchange, or they're very, very afraid of money. And there's this fear-based and lack-based mindset around it. And I have to have it. I have to have it. I have to accumulate more and more and more. And when you are focused in on that box, like you're just not open to what actually can come and be exchanged in that way.
100%. I know there's a really good book that everybody should read. It's called The Psychology of Money, and it is incredible. Like it is so, like you know what to do. You also know how to lose weight, but it's the psychology behind it and like the actual discipline and action steps to get there. Like again, you know how to save money, but to follow through with that is so much different.
Yeah, there's always this I'm sure it's somewhat in that book when you think about psychology. It's like the deeper aspect of thing before behavior changes. And like you can never change something, at least in my mind. It's like, yes, you can put a discipline out there, you can create all these habits, but there's something that had to have changed or tweaked just a little bit for you to even get curious, intrigued, or even put action step to that in the first place. And so there has to be something deeper to be able to really make that shift in that move for sure. So love that.
Okay, so speaking of that book that you just referenced, like what were other things that you experienced growing up, books or talks or podcasts or philosophies that really helped expand your money mindset that other people could look into to help them learn how to get out of a fear-based mindset of money, understand energetic exchange and the psychology behind it all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did grow up very fortunately. Both of my parents were very open with money. They, of course, were talking to me about money, but I was not like, I was as a teenager, they were like, we got to get an IRA, we got to do this, we got to do that. And I'm like, yeah. I'm actually going to go buy this Louis Vuitton bag when I go to Italy with my friend for the summer. And my dad was, I will never forget. He was like, you actually did it? And I was like, I sure did. And I still have that bag and I have probably worn it 5 times. So it's really great money. But it was very openly talked about. And it wasn't until, again, I was in chiropractic school, sitting with some friends, and I just remembered like it was that light bulb moment of, oh, wow, like I've heard these terms before, very fortunately from my parents, definitely not in school, but you've never even heard of an IRA. You don't even know what an IRA stands for. And it was like in that moment that I was like, oh, I'm going to dive deep into this. And like I knew the basics, but then I started reading books. So I read The Simple Path to Wealth. I read The Psychology of Money. I'll Teach You to Be Rich. And then a couple books that have come out since then. Deeper Than Money is a really good one, and Own Your Money. So I can also message these so you can like put them in the show notes, but they are just reading and listening to podcasts. I've listened to the Money Guys show. I've listened to Money with Katie, and just realizing that investing is 2 things. One, it's not complicated. Like you can build an exorbitant amount of wealth with 3 accounts and 3 funds in those accounts. Like it does not need to be complicated at all, but they want you to think that because then financial advisors can charge you a fee to manage your money, which of course, if you're further down the line, hire a financial advisor, but to make your first $100,000 and invest it, you don't need somebody to manage your money. They're actually going to just take hundreds of thousands of dollars at the end of it because that 1% fee adds up very, very quickly. And then the other thing is that investing isn't when you have money to invest. Like I used to be like, okay, when I have like $10,000 saved, I'll start investing. No, it's how the wealthy actually become wealthy. That is what's making them money, is investing and using their money to work for them. Which when I realized that, I was like, dang it, I should have done this at 18. Like the time that your money has to compound is crazy. Yeah. And I'll actually send you guys a website that I use all the time. It's like an investor.gov. I think it's investor.gov. It's a compound interest calculator. And you can go in and just show like, I'm going to invest, let's say $7,000, because that's what an IRA limit is, $7,000. And over the course of like 40 years versus over the course of 20 years, the difference is it's so crazy. But yeah, it's just when you learn that it doesn't have to be complicated. You can invest and make millions of dollars in just a couple of accounts with a couple of funds and just let it sit there. Like, do not get rid of it. Don't sell it.
Absolutely. I think people are intimidated because there's so many different options and there are so many different. So like you've got the financial advisor groups, right? Like Northwestern, for example, Merrill Lynch, for example, but then you have things like Vanguard and they have like robo advisors online and you can open up your own brokerage account, for example, Fidelity. And so people just don't really know where to turn, or they're like, oh, well, like, let me do more research first. And then obviously, you know, like that just gets shunned to the wayside. Right. But they don't realize that, like, I mean, God, even putting in $50 is better than waiting to put in your 7,000 10 years from now.
Yes. And what's also crazy is I used to think that I had to have like a minimum of like $1,000 to start investing, but you can invest with $1. Like with technology these days, it couldn't be easier to start investing. And a lot of people too, they'll, like you said, they'll want to do more research. They'll be like, oh my God, like this is risky. Let me like make sure I have all my T's crossed, I's dotted. But they'll also be like, oh, let me just let the expert handle it. Like they're the expert. But what they don't realize is that if you just buy an S&P 500 index fund, it's just tracking that entire market. So you're hands off. No one's managing it. As Apple and Google go up and Microsoft goes down, it's fluctuating itself out by itself. And there's so much research that shows that those index funds actually outperform financial advisors.
Oh, yeah.
Like even the experts, because
literally
they don't know better than just following the market. Like,
yeah, following the trends.
But yes, follow the trends.
Do you have a resource or a place that you'd actually recommend for just the simple investing that you'd say like this would be an easy place to go?
Yeah, so I opened my first IRA before like I dove into it more and realized, oh, I could actually just do this myself. I opened it with Betterment, which is one of those robo advisors. And I'll never forget, my dad was like, "You're letting a robot do what?" And I was like, "Dad, trust me, just trust me on this." He also like freaked out when I started using a high yield savings account because it wasn't a brick and mortar bank. And now he keeps his money in a high yield savings account. So
Yeah.
thank you. Um, but yes, Betterment for a robo advisor to start investing. And then if you open an IRA, I would start with an IRA because you can open a taxable brokerage account, but it doesn't have the tax advantages that an IRA does. You can go Vanguard, Charles Schwab, or Fidelity. And then once you open that account, you'll have to buy, like transfer the money in, but then you actually have to invest the money. Like people sometimes will just transfer the money in. They'll be like, "I've invested." And I'm like, "You're not." But you can buy different funds. And if you just look up, they're different acronyms. And I think that's where people get freaked out because it's like all these different letters. And if you just Google total stock market index fund Fidelity, it will tell you the letters to type in, or S&P 500 index fund Vanguard, it will tell you the letters to type in. We are Vanguard people in our household. I also opened a brokerage at Fidelity and I love both of those. I don't have Charles Schwab, so I can't speak to it, but like you seriously cannot go wrong.
Yeah.
If you
You just
just
have
look
to start
at
somewhere.
total stock market, S&P 500, and then you want to get like, we don't have a lot of bond just because we're being very aggressive in our investing. Because again, like we don't have a lot of debt, we don't have a house, we don't have kids, we don't have pets. So like our emergencies are a little bit less than somebody with all those other excess expenses. But yeah, just go play around with it. And I looked this morning and I think my like IRA is up 19.2%. And I was like, that is crazy.
It's awesome.
That's really cool. I love all the practical because I think it's going to be really, really useful for a lot of people that have not even potentially dove into it, or they're wanting to dive into it outside of using another expert, quote unquote, and for me, like I've used an expert because I had no idea, but even just hearing and being around social media, like you said, and with all the things with AI now, like it does seem a lot more user friendly and something that I could actually even just do on my side. Obviously, if you have your own financial advisor, keep using your financial advisor, wealth expert, those types of things too. But thank you for making it sound like it's feasible and that anybody can do this versus it just have to be a big project to actually build wealth and actually have your money work for you. So do you have any other thoughts or pieces of wisdom that you would really give to practitioners, entrepreneurs, when they're wanting to expand beyond traditional practice, traditional aspects of making money? Do you have any other words of wisdom for them?
I would just say that if you expand beyond traditional practice, you are not losing and abandoning that clinical identity that you spent so long, investing in and creating. I would also say that there are limitless ways to use the knowledge that you have to make money, whether that be a course, a conference, coaching, even creating a guide. I know, Dr. Sarah, we've talked about that before. Like you have so much knowledge about pediatrics and prenatal, and people love resources with practical steps. So if you go and make a guide and then you just advertise it on social media, you can make a lot of money that is more passive. It's not fully passive, but it is more passive. And you're capitalizing on your experience as a doctor and helping other people and connecting with them to share all of the beautiful knowledge that you have. So leverage the skills that you love and have. Don't freak out about like abandoning your clinical identity because you're still using it. You're just tapping into it in a different way.
Amazing. So, where can our heart-centered community really connect with you to be able to learn more about both aspects of your work or dive in deep and ask you questions?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, hopefully TikTok forever. Um, that's a little up in the air. At with Meg, it is spelled the Whealth. Oh, I had to spell that one out. And I have a ton of resources in my Instagram on the page. I also have like a stand store in the link in bio. And something that I've been very intentional about, obviously, as I'm doing financial education, is I want to share all these resources in education. Of course, I want to monetize it myself, but for every paid resource, I do offer a free version of it. So it's a more condensed, it's not as in depth, but it still gets you like the basic education that you need to build that foundation.
That's incredible. I love how you include both aspects of that. And so people can dive deep or they can just start to skim the surface and then continue to explore resources that they have at hand. So thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Heartwork podcast as we dove into a little bit of identity shift around being a practitioner and wanting more from life. I feel a lot of people are really experiencing and exposing this kind of part of their heart. So thank you for coming on and sharing your journey with it. And if you enjoyed this episode and enjoy what we talked about, please like, share, subscribe, rate our show, and we will see you next time.